Today our book is called The King's Taster. My name's Max, and I eat like a king. I'm the king's taster. I taste all his food before he eats it to make sure it's not poisoned. I also get his leftovers. Plus, I get whatever anybody else drops under the table. I'm the king's taster, but I'm the cook's dog. We've been together since I was a pup. He's the best cook in the kingdom. He lets me lick the bowls and eats the scraps. Then one day, we got a brand new king. The cook went straight to work on the coronation feast. He chopped, he topped, he tailed, he sliced and he stirred and he whisked. He cooked wild boar, peacock, and venison. He baked cheese pies, rose puddings, and syllabub. It was a feast fit for a king. I tasted the king's food. It was delicious. But the king only picked at his food until it was all mashed up. I will not eat this food, he said, and he pushed it to the floor. No one said a word. I ate the king's meal. In the kitchen, the cook clutched at his hair. "Why doesn't the new king like my food?" he cried. I burped. I'd just eaten like a king. "Max," the cook said, "this is a serious matter. Tomorrow night, I've got to serve the king food he'll eat. But what?" I barked. "That's it," the cook cried. "I must get some new recipes. Not a second to lose." He harnessed the horses and we left for France. There, in the finest kitchens of Paris, we discovered a wondrous new concoction made from potatoes. "The king will love this," said the cook. We made it home just before noon. That night at dinner, the cook set the platter before the king, and he whisked off the top. "Your Highness," he said, "may I offer you French fries?" I tasted the king's food. It was delicious. But the king picked and poked at his food until it was mushy and all mashed up. "I will not eat this food," the king said, and he lifted his plate and heaved it across the dining room. No one said a word. I ate the king's meal. Back in the kitchen, the cook was banging his head against the wall. "This is terrible," he cried. I burped. After all, I'd just eaten like a king. "Come on, Max, we've got another journey ahead of us." We set sail for Italy at once. We glided by gondola through the canals of Venice. We learned of fabulous breads and herbs, sausages and cheeses. "Our king won't be able to resist this," said the cook. We made it back home with only hours to spare. "Your Highness," the cook said proudly, "from Italy I bring you pizza." I tasted the king's food. It was delicious. But the king picked and poked and puffed at his food until it was mushy and mucky and altogether mashed up. "I will not eat this food," the king said, and he put it in his catapult and fired it against the dining room wall. No one said a word. I ate the king's meal. "This is no way to live, Max," said the cook, tugging at his hair. "We'd better get it right this time." We cast off our balloon at once and sailed through the skies across the great Atlantic. In Mexico, we journeyed by mule through thick jungles. Near golden pyramids, we learned of kidney beans and chili peppers, cornmeal and spices. "This will win the king over," said the cook. We thanked our guides, soared up into the sky, and made it home with only minutes to spare. "Chili tacos, Your Highness." proclaimed the cook. I tasted the king's food. It was stupendous. But the king, he picked and poked and puffed and plucked at his food until it was mushy and muddy and mucky and altogether mashed up. Then he threw it out the window. It landed with a plop in the moat. "Off with his head!" the king shouted at the cook and stomped away. No one said a word. My meal was eaten by crocodiles. In the kitchen, the cook sat hunched over in his chair. "That's it," he said sadly. "I'm finished, Max. The king's going to chop off my head." He put away all his pots and pans, his whisks, his knives, and stirring spoons. He took off his apron, and he hung it on a peg. "I wish I'd started my own place," said the cook. "I always wanted to. But maybe I'm just no good anymore." "You're the best cook in the world," I barked, but I don't think he understood. So I licked his hand instead. I couldn't sleep. How could anyone not like the cook's food? It didn't make sense. I heard a cupboard door squeak. I saw a shadow scuttling out of the kitchen, so I followed it. Outside the kitchen, there were crumbs on the floor. They tasted like almonds and sugar. I followed the crumbs down the hall and straight to the door of the king's bedroom. I peeked through the keyhole. I ran back to the cook's room and I danced a jig on his belly to wake him up. Then I stood in the doorway and barked. All right, he said. "I'm coming." Outside the king's room, the cook peeked in through the keyhole. "You're a good dog, Max," he whispered. Then he opened the door without knocking. "Hello, Your Highness," he said. The king was sitting in the middle of his enormous bed, eating candy. The sheets were covered with licorice and ginger cookies and huge chunks of marzipan, and he was gobbling like there was no tomorrow. "How dare you enter my bedroom?" cried the king. "Sire," the cook said, "I understand now why you don't eat my food. You've been stealing candy from my kitchen, and you've spoiled your appetite. This must stop." "You can't tell me what to do," he shouted. "I'm the king." "I will tell your mother," said the cook. That stopped the king cold. "You wouldn't," he said. "I would," said the cook, "and I will." The next night at dinner, the king tried his food. And the night after that, he tried a little more. And the night after that, he ate everything on his plate. "Cook," he cried, "your food's fit for a king." "And you, Your Highness," the cook replied, "are at last eating like a king." "Ask me for anything," the king said, "and it shall be yours." I'm not the king's taster anymore, but I'm still the cook's dog, and he's the best cook in the world. We've got our own place now, where everyone else eats like a king.